Hey everyone, it's Dealer Destro back with another modern era G.I. Joe 50th anniversary review. Today we're taking a look at the 50th anniversary Heat Viper. And we'll go ahead and just jump right in. I will leave that up for you guys that haven't seen this yet. Card art is very interesting because they make him look like a skinny dude. And that is not how I envision these guys. I actually envision these guys kind of how the figure is, with a very, a very not bulky presence, but not like what's the word I'm looking for, scrawny either. So dude comes with a lot of the same stuff that you saw on the vintage offering, and I want to say that the gun is a 1-for-1 for the vintage offering. I don't know that to be true, but we will take a gander at the end of this video. And there are some weird nuances with this figure between what you could, like how the vintage one was and what this one is, but he comes with the same backpack with the little exhaust ports, but I don't know what purpose it serves, because I don't know if the vintage one had anything that plugged into the backpack, I guess, now that I think about it. But I've seen the hose done a few ways here, and we will talk a little bit about that now, I guess. But anyway, so it comes with this hose, and the way that I display it now is I take the hose, put it on the connector piece, and run it to this connector piece. And you will see why here in just a second. But again, this is the backpack. A lot of great little sculpting details. I want to say this is almost a 1-for-1 with the vintage. They may have reused it and just updated the back port. But again, we will look at that here at the end of the video when we do a side-by-side. But yeah, softer plastic. Same with the gun. Like it's really soft plastic. I don't know what the reasoning is behind that. But anyway, this was from the first 50th wave, and you can tell because the paint apps on this guy are super spotty where there is paint. Like if you look here on the arms in particular, you notice that because they chose to go with this kind of cloth look, I think this is airtight, actually, his torso, but because they decided to do that, where they would have applied the purple paint, it's like kind of porous, so it doesn't fill in on either side, as you can see, and that really bummed me out. Like normally I would have been all over. There's a little bit of a QC issue here. Normally I would have been all over this, and I thought I would have been all over this when they first revealed this figure, but I held back. I was kind of conservative on this figure because this is not a true representation of the vintage counterpart. And to be honest with you, I was really excited for this figure when they announced it. But if you look here, and this is kind of interesting, right? If you look here, it almost looks like there was supposed to be a port on the side of his head for this hose here to plug into. See, this is the piece here that would have plugged into the side of his head. Like the old vintage figure, but they didn't, and that's I was kind of bummed out about that. What they did do, though, that is different from the vintage figure is they made the faceplate kind of wrap around the whole helmet per se. And now that I'm looking at this guy is in need of some touch-ups. Anyway, so there's that. And even here, spotty paint. And for my Joe guys that bought into the 50th line, see, look at that shoddy paint. shoddy paint. I was a little disappointed that, and I don't know, I didn't, this was around the time I was stopped paying attention to the boards, but I would check into the boards and I would see like no one was complaining about paint applications, which was bizarre because the paint applications for this whole first run of the 50th wave was suspect. It was suspect. And you could tell there was this decline in QC. I don't know if they changed their paint batch. I don't know what they did. But it just seemed like they stopped caring about G.I. Joe. This is kind of right when G.I. Joe started taking a back seat. It went on a little bit of a hiatus, and they came back for the 50th. But what we got, I don't know. I don't know the rhyme or reason behind this. And also the older figure, this is kind of funny here. The older figure had pegs around the feet for the missiles, and this is the route they chose to go for the modern era update. They just have this like loose piece of web gear kind of hanging there. But anyway, so enough about, you know, I guess the state of things, because this figure is kind of old now. But anyway, the head gets good side to side. I don't know why they decided to leave this flesh tone. It kind of defeats the purpose if you're like supposed to be in a fireproof suit. So that was kind of bothersome as well. But for the, you know, they casted it in this color, because if they would have painted in this color, that would have probably been a nightmare, because yellow is just one of those colors that doesn't work good when you paint with it. So arms have good range of motion. You know, good up and down. The elbows also have good range of motion. The hands, I'm glad they incorporated the little extra swivel in there, so they not only do they rotate, but they also swivel. Same on this side, except it's up and down, which allows you for those more dynamic poses. I'm a huge fan of that extra bit of articulation. Legs get you out to there. They're on the normal standard T-joints, so, you know, pretty much what you'd come to expect from a modern era offering. Again, since you have the double knee joint, even with the web gear, you can almost kind of collapse the leg on itself, which is great. It's cool. I like that. Same ankle articulation as you come to expect. But yeah, I mean, I think overall, I'm kind of bummed out that this was part of the wave that had the kind of spotty QC. So I don't know. Like, these guys are hard to look at for me, because as a fan of the vintage figure, having got this is a bummer. It really is. I think Hasbro missed the mark here. And I'm glad that the latest 50th offering, you know, they've at least started paying attention to QC again. So that's a good step in the right direction. So anyway, so I'll get this guy geared up. We'll come back for a side-by-side with his vintage counterpart, and we will go from there. All right, so here he is next to his vintage counterpart, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about, you know, aside from the fact that my vintage figure is not complete, because I'm missing the missiles and I'm missing the hose that goes from the top of the gun to his shoulder. Nonetheless, though, you can see the difference in nuances. So instead of choosing to use better web gear to give it this look, they decided to use the Retaliation Joe Colton web gear in lieu of that. And again, that is corner cutting on Hasbro's part, and I'm kind of harping on this figure, and rightfully so, because I was super excited for it, and I feel like I got a subpar figure as opposed to a full offering that would have matched up with its vintage counterpart. But I guess while we're here, I'm just curious now to see, would these fit? They sure do. They sure do. Look at that. Interesting. Anyway, moving on. It is a 1-for-1 as far as the mold goes. It looks like, because it's got the same slot, same little line work here, same line work in the front there. So that is it is a redo of the mold. Same thing with the backpack. It's got the same markings. It's a 1-for-1. So they did, at least they stayed true to the main weapon loadout, but this is one of those rare times that I'm going to say articulation superiority aside, I like the overall look of this guy still. And you will hardly, seldomly, ever hear me say that, because what we get here versus here. Now, don't get me wrong, for the time, this was groundbreaking. This set a new precedent. Not even the Star Wars figures could match the level of articulation these guys had at the time. The Black Series has come through and has since changed that. But the look of this guy versus this guy, I'm going to have to go with this guy. I like this head. I wish they would have incorporated the peg that the hose could plug into, as opposed to me having to come up with the idea of wrapping it around and plugging it in there. And I've seen it done a number of ways. I've actually seen some guys add the peg, the customizers, and kudos to them. Me, I'm not going to go to those lengths because, I'm all about paint touch-ups, etc. But heavy modification out of the packaging, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm neither one way or another. If you do it, good for you. I mean, it's your Joe-verse, it's your world. Play how you want. But this for when these were coming out, highly disappointed. Do I recommend this figure? If you're a fan of the Heat Viper, you can get them on eBay pretty cheap now. So, and I will leave it at that. As usual, if you like what you see, please subscribe. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Till next time, guys. I'll see you on the next go-around.